Hello, everyone. We will get started in a moment. I can see the numbers are rising pretty quickly, but we will just give folks maybe 1 or 2 minutes and then we can get kicked off. And we've already got a couple of questions. Can we add my... Sure. I don't know how to add someone else's note taker though, but if you know how, you're welcome to do so. And Caleb, your question there about how many people to accept into the internship. We'll have a better number of the number of funds who've signed up to the program by January. We're currently onboarding funds in all the different regions we're working in, so that number is currently rising, but we don't know where it'll land. In past years, we've had, you know, our first year was the smallest and we had 20 funds, but we've kind of gone up to 86 funds in a calendar year as well. So quite a few.
86, that's insane. That's so many opportunities. That's awesome.
Okay, well, the numbers are going up. We are recording, and so we will be distributing this afterwards, but we'll get started. Thank you all for joining us already. Everyone I see joining the attendee group. My name's Seb Butt, founder of Future VC. Very pleased to be here, and I'm joined today by Sophia, who will do an intro for herself shortly. And we're going to spend some time today to talking around, well, what is an experience of someone who's gone through Future VC look like? And that's the experience that Sophia will talk about. And then also how to submit an application and share some information with everyone here around what that process looks like, and also some tips and tricks, things that you can maybe take away from today's session that can help you and your application if you decide that you'd like to go ahead and participate. How this webinar ended up happening. Sophia very kindly, a couple of weeks ago, I think, made a post on LinkedIn about the fact that she has been an intern previously at Future VC, and was happy to kind of share her thoughts, her own journey, and was welcomed with a large number of people reaching out and asking questions. And I think you were very happy to do that. But we also thought it might make sense to invite all of you and many others who have been reaching out and give you an opportunity to hear firsthand and also participate. So I will say in a moment, I'll pass it over to Sophia. I will add one more point that if you've got questions, feel free to raise your hand, feel free to pop it into the Q&A box, but also have some time towards the end to go through those questions.
Exactly. I
Great.
mean, I agree with Seb. This is for you guys. And so anything that you want to get out of it, please do let us know because we really want to help.
Fantastic. Well, with that, I will return to the slide deck later on, but I will turn that off for now, and then I will turn it over to you, Sophia.
Perfect. So I am so glad that all of you came. We were almost at 100 participants, which is crazy. And I think that really talks to the fact that Gen Zers want more opportunities to go into VC, right? It's a very difficult field to go into. And I think definitely Future VC was what made the difference for me, which is why I'm so excited to be here and tell you about my experience. And so just like as a quick backtrack, my name is Sofia Gusowski. I am from Costa Rica, born and raised, and I did my undergrad at Columbia University. Fortunately, about 2 of those years of my 4 were COVID, which is actually when I participated in the Future VC program. And so how did I get there? I actually was looking for my first job, right? Everybody here, I imagine, is looking for those summer internships. It's impossible to get them. And it also seems like you need a connection or like you need some insider knowledge, some tips in order to actually get through the application phase because it's really hard. And I get it, I've been through it. And I was part of a Slack channel called Gen CVCs. Megan is a great friend of mine now. She's my mentor. And I actually joined the Slack channel because of a club that I was in college. And I saw that somebody posted about Future VC. It might have been you, Seb, but I didn't know you at the time. And I said, well, this sounds amazing. Let me give it a try. And so at the moment, I actually didn't have any real experience, I wouldn't say. I had worked on my own startup during the pandemic, and so I was a founder. And so that was my experience. And I also had some things that I had done at school, but that was pretty much it, just some very short-term internships and my own startup. And so I wouldn't say that I was the most qualified at that time, which again is reassuring for all of you guys. Give it a try, right? You never know if this might work for you. And so I actually got through the first phase, which meant I had to send in some short answer questions, which asked me like a startup that I would invest in and what I care about, what I'm passionate about. And then from those application questions, I got one round of interviews with the Future VC team. And then once I passed that round, I actually got to meet different members of funds. And the fund that I actually ended up getting my internship with was Primary Venture Partners. And I actually still maintain a very good relationship with the team, with Jason, who's the general partner, and with Catherine, who was my manager at the time. I actually didn't have a lot of investment experience, maybe not at all, which is why my role actually ended up being in the communications department. And so what they had me doing was meeting a ton of founders, hosting interviews with them, and drafting a ton of the post communications for the firm. And so this was what I did. It still got my foot in the door into VC, which I am here because I want to tell you that I think this is what got me to my future role, which is now at Microsoft in the strategy and ventures and business development. And how this happened was I think I had Future VC in my LinkedIn. I had my experience at Primary, and they saw it and they said, look, she seems like a great fit for a role. And so they actually reached out, which brings me to my second point, which is LinkedIn is a game changer. And me really building my personal brand and posting on there has given me so many opportunities. And so, as young people who are interested in this world, I would really take advantage of it. Another advice that somebody at Primary gave me is it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. And so this is why building a personal brand is so important, right? Go to the networking events, connect with people, tell them about your passions, and really become this memorable person that people think about when they have an opportunity. So for example, I'm in an AI role right now at Microsoft, and I didn't know anything about AI 3 months ago. But me doing all my posts on LinkedIn means people now know me as the AI girl. And so people have certain like conferences, they're like, oh, Sophia, she has something to say, right? And so I think all of these opportunities are really born from two things for me. One, my experience with Future VC, and two, building this personal brand on LinkedIn. And so I really had a great experience. I loved working at Primary. I was like another employee. So this is like a real internship. This is a real experience that you're working with a fund. And apart from that, I also got to learn from experts through the master classes. And so they're not only throwing you into the abyss, even if you don't have any experience, you go through the masterclass portion and then you get to have your own real world experience.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much, Sophia. Right, we're getting a steady stream of questions coming in to the Q&A box. I think some of these will actually get answered as we go through some of the information that I wanted to share. But are there any questions from anyone for Sophia? You're welcome to put up your hand and ask it live, or continue to use chat or Q&A.
You can also ask at the end if you're more comfortable with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say with the experience that you went through, Sophia, with the master classes, often some of the comments that we get are things get really demystified because VC from those kind of outside in can often look like a bit of a black box. You don't really know. To what extent, going through the master classes, did you feel that it did demystify the scenario for you?
Well, again, I come from Latin America, right? Like being part of a venture fund is not something that you hear about ever, right? And even in college, they pursue you into going to finance or consulting. Nobody ever talks about venture. And even though I had heard about it and I love the idea about working with startups, I didn't know what venture capital actually meant, right? And so I think these master classes were very important because you don't feel like you're going into a role and you don't know anything that people are mentioning. You get to define these key terms, right? And you kind of get an idea of what you're going into. And so I think that's also what differentiates this program from others, right? From other experiences. You're not just thrown into the role. You get these people who are holding your hand and are showing you how to get the most out of this experience, right? You can get an internship, maybe not get a return, maybe not make as many connections or learn as much. It really is important about the learning experience that comes during it, before it, and even there's a big community on like my Future VC year. We have like the chat on Slack still, and people still send stuff there, and it's still a very meaningful part of my career.
Fantastic. And then there's actually, interestingly, a couple of offshoot WhatsApp groups and Slack communities that I've been welcomed in as well. And there's a Future VC angel investing group. So all sorts of kind of sub communities that have popped up over the course of the last few years. I did see a hand go up. Maybe the hand has gone down. But I see some of the
Oh, there it
Henan, you've got a question there. Let me go ahead, and you should be able to ask your question, or I will need to allow you to ask it. Give me one moment. There you go. You should be able to ask your question now.
Hey.
Hello. Hi. Yeah, I guess my question, Sophia, was to be honest, fairly similar journey. Originally from India, never heard of VC before. Just came to London as an international student. I guess the question which I really had was, what made you go into VC? Like, how did you go about figuring out that this is the role that you want to go into and the sector?
Great question, and thank you for being a brave soul and raising your hand. I think my answer really, when I was going through the pandemic, just like everyone else, I really thought I wanted to do something important with my time. And I went through a very difficult college application process. Just like the job application process, I had no idea what I was doing. The oldest sister, my parents hadn't done undergrad in the US. So I was kind of discovering all of that by myself. And so I thought I really wanted to create a startup where I could give mentorship and support to Latin American students from families where they didn't have the opportunity to pay for a college counselor, and give them the opportunity to come to the US to study. And so a very big part of what I did was personal project support, which meant if somebody had a business, if somebody had a social impact project or something that they care about, just like a passion project in general, I would help them carry that through, right? And so let's say you have an environmental project. How can you bring it to school? How can you bring it to the national level? What events can you organize? And I realized that working with students on their passion projects was pretty much working with a startup on their passion project, which is their business. And so I think I really made that connection in my head. And I said, if I can help a student with a small scale project, wouldn't it be super cool to help a startup founder carry on their business, right? And give them that sort of support. And so I think that's really what brought that interest. But in reality, I didn't know what that actually meant until I tried Future VC, right? And so that's really what brought me the exposure, and even participating in groups like Gen Z VCs and going to those initiatives, going to different events, is what really brought me to where I am today. And so this was really a very big stepping stone in my career.
Thank you.
Thanks, Samantha, for the question. We've got one more from Wiswanath. Please go ahead.
Hey,
Hey.
so my question was, I know you said that you had your own startup when you applied to Future VC, and I wanted to see how like your experiences at Future VC and in general just working in venture capital has helped you with that startup, and what sort of skills in venture capital can help you when trying to build your own startup.
That's a great question. I think I have kind of a sad answer, which is being an international student, I actually can't make money with a startup. And so I actually had to put it aside a little bit. But I do think that being part of a venture firm, right, and working with other investors and founders really gives you a big outlook into how the experience is like, right? And so if you know what investors are looking for, you know what to build. If you have other founders, supporter friends, which sometimes they give you this when you're in a venture firm, they have their portfolio part of the firm, and they give startups a lot of support, which usually means connecting you with other companies in their portfolio. And so I think really being part of this atmosphere that's super entrepreneurial and brilliant and dynamic really pushes you forward and encourages you to pursue your own ideas. Fortunately, I would have loved to dedicate more time to my own startup, but maybe at some time in the future.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Wiswanath. And we've got a question from Jamal.
Hey, Jamal.
Hello, hi Sophia, hi Seb. Thank you for
Hey.
hosting this. So I was wondering, I've been talking to plenty of people in VC during the past weeks, and it seems like one thing that they all like to see is someone being a founder like you, Sophia. You said you didn't necessarily have that much experience, but that probably looked fairly good on your CV. But of course, it's not something that's for everyone. So what's the next best experience or thing that someone can show to get into the field?
I think you don't have to be a founder, but working for startups definitely helps, right? Because if you're investing in founders, you kind of have to understand what founders need. You need to be able to make those connections, because giving somebody money is relatively easy, right? For my job, I talk to founders all the time, and I tell them like, oh yeah, we could invest in you. They tell me, okay, so could everybody else, right? The money is easy to get when you have a good idea. But what really makes a difference is those connections. And so if you're plugged into the startup ecosystem and are going to events, are showing that you want to connect with people, I think this is what really differentiates, right? Because the VC world is all about connections and building community. And so even if you don't want to be a founder or you're not a founder, don't worry. I think just plugging yourself into this ecosystem, building a personal brand on LinkedIn, which I was saying before, and getting some experience as a startup operator could be some really good experience builders that you could try.
Yeah, and maybe I'll add a few comments as well. There's definitely been a change in the expectation of experience of working in startups. I would say 8 or 9 years ago, it probably wasn't that significant on the radar. People were transitioning across from the world of consulting or audit directly into VC. But I think VC's back for two reasons. One, the VC market's got more competitive, and so the people who are going out there and building deal flow, identifying startups to invest in, need to build high quality relationships with the founders. And to be able to do that, often you need to be able to empathize or understand, or at least recognize some of the pains that they might be going through. So that's why the expectation of it perhaps is kind of increased. Well, one of the reasons why it's increased more recently. At the same time, it's not a prerequisite. Personally, I see these people coming into the industry from a variety of different backgrounds. What, however, does help is spending some time looking at the space, identifying an area that you are personally passionate about, and doing a deep dive and understanding which startups play there. Because if you can demonstrate that interest level and a personality to be curious enough to go and want to spend time figuring out what an industry looks like, well, that's actually more important than maybe anything else from the perspective of the VC, because that's you demonstrating in a real life way how you would perhaps approach it. The difference being, once you're inside the world of the VC, you'll now have all those tools and expertise and ways of doing everything that you perhaps already demonstrated in yourself. Thank you, Jamal, for your question. We have a couple more, I think. I did see hands go up.
I think going from that, also building your niche, right? And so if you're able to go to a VC and say, look, I see that you have nobody who's an expert in AI. I am. These are 3 companies that are probably not in your radar. They'll be super impressed, right? And so if you build this niche where you're an expert in and they're not, this really will help you differentiate.
Fantastic. Right. Loka, would you like to ask your question?
Hey, Loka.
Hi. So basically my question was like, what attracts me to VC is having like the opportunity to stay at the forefront of innovation. But after actually having worked in VC, what do you find to be like the most exciting part of being in the space?
Well, I think when you meet with founders, you actually are at the forefront of innovation, right? And so they're building stuff in spaces that you didn't even know existed. So for example, AI, right? And so this is what I'm doing right now, building partnerships in this space. But then you go and you talk to a founder and they're like, okay, we're connecting AI with chemistry. You're like, whoa, right? And so it creates like a whole new deep dive that you can go into. And so I think really innovation and like creative thinking comes from interactions with people. Right, that's my favorite thing to do, having coffee chats with people, learning about their interests and their passions. And so I think that's definitely my favorite part of being in a VC role, just getting to talk to so many founders and learn about their passion projects.
Yeah, I often find if you are someone that likes to get to know or understand a variety of topics, VC is perhaps the best career for those super generalists, right? You know enough about a lot of different things, and you can continue to kind of pick up new areas of interest as well. But yeah, it is, as Sophia said, you get to talk to people who are kind of working literally at the bleeding edge of many of these. Thank you, Loka. And we've got a question from Lily.
Hey, Lily.
Yes. Hi, nice to meet you. Yeah, I connected with you on LinkedIn, Sophia. Yes, and I'm happy to hear what you've been sharing. I have two questions. The first one to Sophia specifically. I really love the idea about like not who we know, but like more about who know us, right? And I see you spend time on personal branding, and I see you very active on LinkedIn, and also you're good at your job and you do all other things. I want to ask about how you manage your time. How are you self-disciplined? Like this is how much time I will spend on building my personal brand on LinkedIn. How is that look like for you? And I save the second question for Seth later. Thank you.
Yeah, so great question. People ask me this a ton. It's like, how are you doing all these things? Like, how do you sleep? And so really things to say, I sleep more than 9 hours per night, right? Like I do not like let go of my sleep for anything. At the same time, I prioritize my friends and family, right? And so if I have to leave a meeting at work or put something behind, I will prioritize the people in my life who I love, right? And so that's always number one for me. And I recommend like stay true to the people that you love. This is always the most important. I think the second thing is, for me, creative writing is one of my strengths, right? And so sometimes when I'm posting a ton of LinkedIn, it takes me 2 seconds to write a post, right? Because I'm just like constantly thinking about these things in my mind. And it's just based on everything I do at work, right? And so if I go on a call with a founder and I learn a ton of stuff, all I have to do is literally at the top of my mind, remember 2 of the takeaways that I got from the call and immediately post it, right? Just like don't delay. And a lot of people are super scared of being a poster. You know what? I was super afraid of doing this at first. Now I have people stopping me in random parties and being like, "Hey, I saw your LinkedIn." It's, "Hey, thank you. You're seeing my stuff. That's great." And so I think just dedicating 5 minutes from your day, it's nothing. Like when you're going to the bathroom or when you're getting your lunch, dedicate 5 minutes to writing a post. And over time, it's really gonna make a difference. And at the same time, as I said, prioritize your friends, family, and community building. And so I think this is how I'm getting all these opportunities, because I say, okay, am I gonna get an extra project at work? Or am I gonna go to like this networking event where I'm gonna meet people who I could potentially bring to my team? And so I've actually gotten to do a lot more in my job than I was expected to, because I'm out there meeting founders and being like, "Hey, do you want to partner with Microsoft?" And so I'm bringing them over, right, through my personal experiences. And so I think the best thing you can do for yourself, especially in a job like this, is spend time community building and dedicating 5 minutes of your day. That's it.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very practical advice. Thanks a lot. Yes. Yeah, the questions for Seb. I would love to share a little bit about my background with you. I'm an MBA student at Emory right now, but before MBA, I worked at EdTech startup, more in like the education program development side of that startup. So, like Sophia, I don't have experience in investment, but I'm really interested in that when I study at Emory. So I want to ask, like, when you match the applicant with the venture, like the fund, how is that matching process, especially for people with less experience in investing?
That's a fantastic question, and then thank you so much for sharing it. We use we've developed a way to assess applications where we share with you some questions which you may or may not have already answered, and the initial assessment for anyone participating or wanting to participate is just focused on the responses that you share for those questions. We don't look at resumes, we don't look at CVs until much later in the process. So after that initial assessment of the questions, each of those questions is assessed by 3 different people who work in VC or associated very closely with working with VC. They are scored, and then those who achieve a score above a certain threshold move forward to the next stage of the process. So very, very much a data-driven approach, eliminating as much bias as possible, and then obviously you'll then get to meet people during an interview process, and then later on, and we will look at CVs, and basically we're looking at CVs later on to identify kind of things like universities, things that some of our own data more than anything else. It's not really a part of the assessment process. So anyone and everyone is available and encouraged to apply. We've had applicants from all different parts of communities, people early in their career, people late in their career, people who have gone off and had a family and want to return back into work, people who have never done anything to do with finance, and we've kind of accepted those candidates as well.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Lily. Appreciate your question. Right, we have a question from Nicole.
Hey, Nicole.
So after hearing about the good parts of working in a VC, I think as an extrovert, it sounds amazing to talk to people all day. But I was wondering, what are the challenging parts? You know, what are the parts that you're like, you would usually kind of, you know, when you come back home at the end of the day, you're like, oh my God, I had, you know, I was struggling with this or with that, just to hear about, you know, also the positive and negative sides. I want to get a holistic view on that.
Want to take it, Seb?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. And I've heard there's a mixed bag, right? It is a very competitive industry. And so often, how do you demonstrate your willingness or your capability, right? You want to progress up the career path, you want to do better, you want to win startups, and often it's about, it reminds me actually, I'm obviously a big fan of boxing, and I always followed Mike Tyson, and he would always say I would go and run at 4 a.m. in the morning because I knew everyone else would not. And I think it's that mentality, right? It's, you will be asked, and if not necessarily asked, you will probably need to spend a lot of time, a lot of your own time, especially in the early days of your career, to close that gap, to be able to compete against others. With, you know, some of the comments that Sophia shared as well, it is a very social business, the world of VC and building relationships. So a lot of that doesn't happen necessarily during 9 to 5. There's events typically every evening. You know, if you're in a hub city like London, San Francisco, New York, there's always events to go to, and so those do kind of have an impact as well. So it is a job that comes with quite a lot of intensity. There's a rapid change of direction there, and how do you judge success? It's not really one of those spaces where you can say I did X, Y, and Z, and I ended up being successful in 2 weeks or 3 months. Some of those success stories aren't really going to make themselves clear for years, because you invest at a very early stage, or, you know, relatively early stage, and then you'll monitor those businesses over time. So it's a business that will push you and stretch you, and perhaps the rewards don't come until a little bit later.
I have 2 pieces of advice though that work for me. I know it can be very overwhelming and you feel like you have to talk to everyone, but I would prioritize building very meaningful relationships. And how can you do this? Being kind and being authentic, right? And so people know when you're going to these events and like you just want to get something out of them. People don't like this. People don't like being played. And so just like be your most kind and authentic self. And I think this should go a very long way. And at the second time, I think you should prioritize a give, not get mentality, right? So when you're going into a conversation, how can I help you? I see that you're building this. Maybe I can connect you to this person. A lot of people just directly go into conversations like, hey, can you introduce me to blah? Or can you give me 30 minutes of your time? But what do you have to offer? And so I think this can really mean that you're creating a lot more meaningful relationships with people, and just like being kind will set you apart.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nicole, for the question. And we'll go to Carlos. Oh no, I pressed the wrong button. We'll go to Siddharth first, and Carlos, we will be back. We'll be back with you shortly.
Hey, Siddharth.
Hi, Sophia. Hi, Seb. Thanks for taking the time. First of all, I've got a 2-part question. First for Sophia and then Seb. Just double clicking on the point of building out a thesis on what sort of sets you apart and what particular sector you're interested in. How important do you think is having technical expertise over that sector important? Especially when you're looking at some things like AI or Web3, there's a lot of technical elements that go into it. And as a sub question to that, how important do you think is modeling? Is that even a part of it? Because I know that juniors work on sourcing quite a lot. So is that something that you'd also perhaps look at?
So on the technical side, I'll tell you, I studied economics and psychology, and my forte is creative writing. I have absolutely no technical experience, and I had to go to every single office hour to pass my introduction to Java class, right? I am working in AI. I work with AI founders and startups, and my technical background is so limited, right? Everything that I've learned is because I read newsletters every morning, because I talk to people, and because they're patient enough to teach me, right? And so I think, again, same thing. If you're kind, open-minded, and willing to build meaningful relationships, this is all you need, right? I have no background in code or machine learning. I just talk to people who are kind enough to teach me, right? And so I think that should be a very reassuring thing that, of course, having some technical knowledge is important, and I've gotten to learn that. But to get your foot in the door, that's not necessarily what you need.
Got it.
Yeah, so just to add to that, I totally agree with Sophia and some of the people who I know who have been really successful in the world of VC, but actually, in fact, also in the world of tech startups. And I also know a couple of CTOs who have come from a non-engineer or a non-pure engineering background and have ended up doing that role. It is about being able to pick up knowledge, and how do you do that, right? It's all of those things that Sophia said. It's speaking to people, it's reading, it's being proactive, it's being curious. But I think if you can kind of continue to build that knowledge incrementally over time, you'll always put yourself in a good position.
Perfect. Thanks. Super helpful. Seb, also just the fact that want to know more about the case studies and the sort of interview questions that you have after the first initial application process is done. If you can shed some light on that.
Yes, I've got a separate part, or in a few minutes when we've gotten through a few more questions, we'll go through that more specifically.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank
No
you.
worries. Thanks, Siddharth. Okay. And Carlos.
Hey, Carlos.
Carlos, I
You're
think you're on mute. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I have some couple of concerns in terms of the eligibility of the program. I'm a Brazilian student doing an MBA at Booth. I don't hold an HB1 visa or a green card, but I'm allowed to work in the US through the OPT or the CPT up to 3 years after graduation without sponsorship. So in many cases, I hear that this is not on work authorizations. In other cases, that is considered a work authorization for certain standards. Am I eligible to apply for the program?
Carlos, I would suggest drop me a line and I will ask someone who will definitely know. I'm new to the US. I do live here now, but I'm still figuring things out. So if you drop me a line, I can get that info, unless Sophia, you know.
Yeah, so I actually am in the same scenario as you. I am Costa Rican, that's my nationality, and I had the F1 visa, and so that was enough for my internship.
Great, thank you.
No email needed. Thanks, Sophia. Great. And Estefania.
Hey.
Hello. Hi, Seb. Hi, Sophia. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for this session. Very useful. So I have one question, Sophia, for you. Being an international, obviously, venture capital, as you mentioned, is it's a field where you really need to develop a strong network. So I was wondering, how did you face this, or how did you approach developing your network, being an international, like having to start developing your network probably from zero, or starting from your classmates and alumni from your school?
Great question. And so I did start my network from zero. When I came to college here, I didn't know a single person in New York. And so I think it's all about being very proactive. Two things: LinkedIn, really, like, I can't say it enough. Really use your LinkedIn to build a personal brand. I think making it a goal for yourself to reach out to 5 new people every week, like, do that. At the same time, give, not get mentality. Hey, I saw your post about blah, 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 blah. Let me help you with this, right? Or I posted something about a resume tool and some people asked me for it and they said, hey, here's some feedback. Well, thank you so much for like actually reading through it and like giving me some feedback. That's something that I love to hear about. And so I think if you actually take your time to read through LinkedIn, right? Get to know people that you want to meet, reach out with a give, not get mentality, right? And offer a conversation. And I think this is super valuable. At the same time, there's a ton of open networking events in the city, right? They're posted on a ton of like Future VC. I post some, Gen Z VC Slack, which I can send the link afterwards. You can join this. They post a ton of events. and founders and VCs always want more people to attend because there's so many, they just kind of want to fill the room. And so go to these events, introduce yourself, and just talk to random people. Be like, hey, I love what you're building. I saw your LinkedIn. Can we talk? I really am curious about what you're building. And so if you really go with a kind and authentic mindset and go to these events, say, okay, I'm going to go with 3 new connections. And then from there, something that I started doing is posting about it. So I said, these are 10 people that I met this week and why you should meet them too. And so I list 10 people that I connected with that week, totally new. And then, wow, okay, she's actually doing an effort to get to know founders. Maybe I'll reach out as well. And so really putting yourself out there will mean, 1, people will start reaching out to you. And 2, you'll also get more visibility to events around the city that you can go to and meet people.
Thank you, Sophia. And if may I ask like a follow-up question there, did you find something from your background or being an international coming from a different culture was somehow a competitive advantage or something that you also leveraged to propel your career in VC?
So not really. I don't think that's like differentiated me as much. I think something that I can offer is coming from Latin America. Maybe I have like a special outlook into this region, which is obviously becoming super interesting for many VCs. And so maybe that's something that you can leverage, right? To like make your niche, make your personal brand. But it's not something in particular that I worked with.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant, thanks, Sophia. Estefania, I want to add one point with regards to your question around how to go out and build a network, and it's very similar to what Sophia said. But I would say people who go to networking events are not generally there to meet people that they know. They are purely there to go out and meet new people, and I think that's what often doesn't means that people don't go and introduce themselves. But I would encourage everyone on this call, if you're given the opportunity, go and put your hand out in front of someone, say hello, and within seconds you'll be in a conversation with a new person. Great. We've got one more question, I think, and then we will jump into a couple of things. So, George, would you like to ask the final question?
So yes, hello Seb, hello Sophia. Thank you for your time today, answering all of our questions. I was curious to know what's the situation with people being European citizens. Do you accept people that are outside from the UK but are based in Europe?
Yeah, so we have previously run cohorts where were funds in Europe. That's not running immediately right now. So we are looking at launching a European process in a few months. So follow us, look out for posts, and as soon as we've kind of finalized a few things with some of our European partners, we'll go ahead and make those announcements. But at the moment, we've got 2 programs that are live, the US program and the UK program. But we do plan on opening up some more placements in Europe very soon. We have done in the past very successfully, so we want to also work in that region. We always see some fantastic people coming through.
That's cool. And another thing that's more personal. Personally, I have some experience with venture scouting, and we have also closed a successful deal with a fund in the US. But I still find it hard to get more experience in venture capital, and I try to discover great initiatives like Future VC. Does having experience like venture scouting help in my application? How is that viewed?
If the question is whether it helps in your application for Future VC, because we'll take people with no experience whatsoever, it's perhaps not going to help as much as it would be perhaps if you were applying for a job in VC, an associate job or an analyst role. That's where it could potentially help quite a bit, because depending on who you're doing scouting with, and also depending on kind of the structure around the scouting program, that will open you up to a world of knowledge that will help for you to understand better. At the same time, I would say that there are some scouting programs out there that take and not necessarily give, so be careful and do your due diligence when investigating which programs you want to go and scout for.
For sure, I get it. Yeah, And maybe one last question is, I don't know if Sophia had such, if you had such thoughts before, but personally, I don't have that experience working with numbers and finance, to be honest. But I think I'm great at community building, connecting people with each other. How there are some roles in funds and in general. Could people like me who are who have more not experience but are more talented to some other areas apart from analyzing deals be viable to a fund? And if yes, how so?
Yeah, so like most funds have an investment team, but they also have a platform team. So as I was saying before, the platform team is there to help support founders, to connect them with other founders in the ecosystem, with other investors, with other tools. And so this might be a very good fit for you. Or the communications team, which is the experience that I had with Future VC at Primary, in which I was just talking to founders and drafting social communications. And so I think both of these spaces could be very fit for you, especially if you don't feel as comfortable with financial modeling.
George, I would also suggest you look at the different types of funds, right? So you've got really early stage funds that are investing in pre-seed or seed stage, where essentially there isn't a lot of financial information to review in the first place. It's all based on other factors. It's the industry, the founders themselves, the market opportunity, and other topics. If, however, you look at maybe a fund that's a much later stage, if it's a Series D, an E, or it gets closer to the world of private equity, that's perhaps where there is a bigger emphasis on going in and working through modeling scenarios. So there is some room there as well. I would add one point that in the last, again, 6 or 7 years, because of the way that the industry has gone and because there's so much more capital available now, even within those investment teams, you often have two different types of roles. You have those people who are focused purely on sourcing and going out and developing those relationships, as opposed to, again, doing the number crunching side of things.
Also, I just want to
And
point out.
maybe also
No, go for it, George.
venture studio maybe too.
Venture studio, did you say?
Yes.
Yeah,
Maybe
totally.
that could work too.
Absolutely. Yep. That's kind of a hybrid between a venture capital fund and an accelerator, and those typically will expect different skill sets as well.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
And
Before
sorry,
we go
Sophia,
on,
did you want to say something? Sorry to interrupt you before.
no, before we go on with the presentation, I just wanted to point out that Hemant made a WhatsApp chat for everybody, and so for everybody to join, which I think is great. And so it's good to build community here and start supporting each other. So I don't know if everybody can see the link of like within the questions, but I'll try to put it live so that everybody can join the chat.
Amazing. We'll grab
Great,
that
thank
and
you,
we'll
Jack.
move across. Okay, thank you. I will now thank you all for the questions. This has been great. I will share my screen. There was one question I did see in the Q&A, which was someone asking around whether you have to pay to participate in Future VC, as in, do the interns have to pay to participate? I just wanted to make sure everyone's aware that's not the case with Future VC. You never have to pay to be a participant, and you will get paid to be an intern or in a placement. So it's you getting paid as opposed to anyone here having to pay anything themselves. Great. Okay, so wanted to kind of touch on a couple of things. I know we've only got 15 minutes to go, so I might go fairly quickly. But our mission, kind of our Future VC, stays the same. We were born out of a broader group called Diversity VC back in 2017 in the UK, and we wanted to bring a more practical way to support. But here we are 5, 6, 7 years later, and the problems are still kind of there. And whilst there's been some marginal improvements, there's still a lot of work to do. Future VC provides internship and development programs. We developed this in partnership with Diversity VC, and we founded in 2018. The 3 different regions, the UK, US, and Europe. During the pandemic year, it was slightly different. So I do want to flag that our masterclasses are made available more broadly, and we'll be continuing to do that this year as well. in the pandemic year, we didn't have an internship program, but we did make masterclasses available to around 500 people weekly for about 12 weeks in 166 cities around the world. So really broad reach. We've had over 1,500 participants of one form of Future VC or another, 50 plus people who have been through the program now work in VC. Others have decided that VC wasn't for them, which is completely fine as an outcome. Some others have kind of figured out that they want to go and get some startup experience and come back into VC later on. But we've got over 50 people now working, and then over 100 funds have participated in Future VC, and many of those funds return every year. We've just got a few. There's actually another slide in a moment that gives you a better understanding of all the funds. And so the kind of the journey that we want to take or contribute towards for people who want to get into VC is that we have our 8-week summer program. It's our flagship program. It's essentially a VC taster program. Often those get extended, so you might go in for 8 weeks, but the fund might want to keep you for a little bit longer. And during that program, as well as having the paid internship, you also receive masterclasses from experts in the industry, as well as industry deep dives. So we'll take popular topics like AI and try to demystify those. We'll probably have Sophia back doing that this year. And so we also have a mentoring program. So during the program, if you're accepted, you're allocated a mentor. That's someone that you can kind of catch up with bi-weekly, get a 30-minute conversation. Those folks are working in VC today, so you can take them your most difficult questions or anything that you're not clear about, and hopefully work through those together as well. And again, people who have had mentors in the Future VC program continue to stay in contact for months and often years later as well. Up next is our fellowship, the 12-month program, which we've just launched this year. So this is brand new for us. We're running this in beta in the UK, and the plan would be to then bring it into the US and into Europe as well. This 12-month program, we took feedback from both funds and interns. Funds told us that we often want to have interns for longer because once they've got that basic knowledge, they start to become dangerous. Often the internship comes to an end, so we want to keep them here for a longer period of time. And then it's a similar kind of type of feedback from the interns where they're just kind of getting their head around some of the foundational topics. And obviously the 8-week program comes to an end. So this looks to solve that. We also, through quite a bit of research, found that to get a job in VC, there is a pretty strong pathway through internships, and that could be typically from 1 to 3 internships. And so the way that we're structuring the 12-month program is that you will have 2 different internships, 2 6-month placements back to back in 2 different funds. And then the idea is that you'll be able to get quite a lot of exposure, build some good work experience, and just get a different look from 2 different VCs. And I mean, there'll be different industries, or clearly there'll be different people that you'll be working with. A huge part of what we do at Future VC is around community building, and so we touched on that earlier. WhatsApp groups, Slack groups, meetups, all these things kind of continue to happen after the program is ended, and this almost replicates one of the advantages that people traditionally have had getting into VC, because it is about people, it is about who you know, and we see our community interacting with one another in the same way maybe some peer-to-peer groups interacted with each other in years bygone. And so they help each other, they share deal flow, they share ideas, they remain connected. And so that kind of strength through numbers really seems to help our network. And then finally, we've had fantastic people go through our program, like Sophia and many others. And these are the role models and champions that we want to continue to work with and partner with, and kind of share their successes back with this group. But that's kind of what Future VC's strategy is and what we're working towards. A quick snapshot of just some of the funds that have participated. There's many more, but I couldn't squeeze any more onto this slide. The flagship internship program, the application is already open. It closes on the 4th of January. We'll begin screening thereafter. The screening process is, as I mentioned earlier, 3 different people will be assessing every single answer we read. and we'll be scoring those, and then the platform that we use, it's a platform called Applied. The website is beapplied.com if anyone's interested and want to have a look. And the aim of that platform is to eliminate bias. We leverage a lot of the capabilities of that platform to make our process work. You'll then have, sorry,
Seb. I was gonna say, if it's helpful, I'm more than happy to share some of the answers that I wrote in and how they worked for me, just to give you more resources. Fantastic. Thank you. Thereafter, we'll do the case studies and candidate interviews. So the case studies will be in the form of what are the questions in the application is, tell us about a startup that you'd invest in. The case study will ask you to take that example even further, and we'll provide you with a template. We'll provide you with some specific guidance in order for you to be able to complete the case study. Candidate interviews will take place both initially with Future VC and then with funds. And once all of that's complete, we'll begin the matching process where we'll finalize which candidates, which interns are going to be given an offer. We will match them up to funds, and then offers will be sent out. And then the internships will begin on June the 17th. There's a little bit of flexibility around when the internship begins. I appreciate those who have other roles, or if they're studying, you might have exams or anything else. And so there is some flexibility around the starting date, but it's there or thereabouts. We want to have most people having or going through the program at the same time. I'll talk briefly about the other program. I think I've covered most of the topics on this slide. But actually a couple of points there. There is the jobs and paid work opportunities that we will share with the networks of those in the program. We will share those with you. And then we will also have some dedicated sessions looking at developing soft skills. So we talked a lot earlier about networking, but we'll help and work through some of those topics. We'll help and bring in some recruitment agencies to guide you in terms of building a CV as well. And it got me thinking after listening to Sophia earlier, perhaps we even need a whole session around kind of building your own social branding strategy. That might be something we want to investigate as well. Seb, just a question. So everybody is saying in the Q&A that they don't have access to the chat, and I think it's disabled. So I just sent the link. If you still can't see it, let me know via the Q&A, but it should work now. Just seeing tons of questions about this.
And I'm not clear how to make the chat available to everyone. So if we've got the link in the chat. Oh, I see the WhatsApp link is in the chat now.
Perfect. Okay, amazing. So I just sent it, and if you're not seeing it, just write on the Q&A and I'll send you the link privately.
Maybe we can also post it in the Q&A. Oh, but maybe everyone's not going to see that. Okay, yeah, we can also email it to you afterwards. But so I just want to touch on the UK program very quickly. This is so we're having the 8-week internship is available in the US and the UK in both regions. The 12-month program we're doing in the UK only at the moment, and then we'll be figuring out when we're going to launch this in the US and potentially Europe. The application for this is also open. We have a slightly longer window to apply, so 20th of January 2024 is when you need to apply by, and then we've got a very similar process. The only difference being there's going to be more interviews during that period in February, because there's 2 funds that you're potentially going to be placed with, and just the assessment is going to be slightly more in depth. So those happen then. Offers will go out in March, and then the internships will actually begin around March and April, and those will be for 12 months. Great. I think I've covered this. When can you apply? You can apply, and who can apply? Anyone can apply, and you can apply now. It's all open, but do recognize we're here for a purpose and a focus. So read our website, and we look forward to seeing your application. How to apply? If you go to the website, top right-hand corner, there's a little yellow tab. It says apply now. Once you click on that, it will take you through to the different application the different application types, and select the one that's most appropriate. Some tips for the application as you're going through the questions. in the platform that we use. Make sure you read the question and make sure you're I know it sounds quite really simple, but we have a pretty strict marking system and we want to make sure that you're answering the right question. Answer all parts of the question. If you're asked to give an example, give one. If the question has 3 separate parts to it, answer each of those 3 different parts to ensure that you get the maximum points. Answer each question separately. The way that we assess your responses, it's going to get randomized. And so if you, let's say, have 4 questions that you answer, but you're referring to your earlier answers in your latest question, we won't be able to make those links, and so it might not make sense to us. So answer each question separately as if you're answering it completely separated out from anything you've already shared. Show curiosity, especially in the question asking about a startup. That's clearly one of the traits that we look a lot for. Write clearly, try to be succinct. We read hundreds of these. No, we read thousands of these, and so there's it's much easier to score those that are laid out clearly. So just think about how you want to use maybe bold, or if you want to use bullet points, make it easier for us to get your information. And then proofread. We do make allowances for language barriers, but do that. A new thing. Obviously, the world has learned about Gen AI. The platform that you use does not and is not able to identify a response that's been written by AI, and that's okay. But it does give us guidelines as to what a Gen AI enabled answer looks like, and so the reader is able to compare the answers that we're seeing versus what we think was created by a piece of tech. I'm of the mindset that if you could use any tools to make your responses better, do that. We're looking for clarity of thought. We're looking for people to be critical, and some of the traits that you'll read about in the application. But copying and pasting isn't probably going to be the best way of doing that.
Yeah, I was gonna say something to consider is if you're copy pasting a ChatGPT answer, so is a lot of other people, and so your answers might look very similar. And so it's better to write 1 or 2 very short sentences that are very concise and personalized and true to yourself, rather than just doing this, even though I'm the hugest AI proponent. But I've been reading a lot about recruiters on LinkedIn saying, look, we're getting 50 applications that look exactly the same. And so this really does make it hard to distinguish yourself in a very competitive application process. Yeah,
great point. Thank you, Sophia. The case study, someone asked about that earlier, you'll get to choose a startup. We'll ask you to write an investment summary. And then again, when you get to the case study part during the interviews, it will be the same. Startup will ask you to investigate. As I mentioned earlier, we'll provide you with a template. And those interviews, the first round with Future VC will typically be between 15 and 20 minutes. Some very general questions about you and why you wanted to join the program. We'll touch on perhaps 1 or 2 things from your application, and then additional rounds are going to be with us involving the funds as well. Those are our email addresses. You are very welcome to reach out. You're also welcome to reach out on LinkedIn. And if we can help as you get through the application, please let us know. Also, always open to feedback. And I think we have 1 minute to go. So if anyone wants to squeeze in a question, you're very welcome to do so. Otherwise, I would like to thank... Okay, we have a question. Laura, go for it.
Hi, I first of all wanted to say thank you to Sophia and Seb, both of you, for organizing this. I think it's been very informational, but also motivational for people who are trying to break into VC. And apologies if this question was already asked, that I had to join a little later. But I wanted to ask how, for you, Sophia, and also for Seb, when you're speaking to founders, what are some questions that you enjoy asking, since you're really talking about what's the kind of being at the forefront of innovation when you're speaking to those founders? I'm just wondering, what are the typical questions that you like to ask the most?
I'll start with my question, which is, I love to know what they're passionate about and why they're building what they're building. People love to talk about themselves. And if they're a startup founder, they definitely love their idea, that they devote a lot of time to it. And so I think really making the conversation shifted on them is a very strategic thing to do, right? So why are you passionate about this AI chemistry space? Why are you building what you're building? What's your experience? What's your background? Who are your favorite people to connect with in this industry? What are you looking forward to? So these are some of the questions that I ask.
Oh, that's great. And maybe I do angel invest and so have some exposure to this as well. I've got my, I guess, my own framework. The two that for me are really important. One is understanding what they do kind of aside from work, really get to know them. What are they passionate about in a way outside of the world of work, and where have they pushed themselves in that. And then the second one for me is it's again not too dissimilar to what Sophia shared, but it's what's the problem that you're looking to solve. Is it a clearly articulated problem? Does it come with we can figure out how to solve it, and that will always change. My expectation is that any early stage business will have a thesis and that will evolve, but you do need to recognize what the initial problem is, and so understanding that clearly is always really important for me.
Perfect. Thank you both so much.
Brilliant. Well, thank you all for joining and participating and asking us some great questions. Really appreciate it. Follow us on socials. We'll look out for announcements and things that we're working on. Sophia, thank you so much. We're very grateful that you went through the program. You selected us to do that initially and then come back and obviously give back to the community as well. We appreciate it very much.
And I really hope to meet many of you, reach out. I really am super open to talking. And so I wish you all the best of luck.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.